For Americans, Cuba is a forbidden country, dominated by images of Che Guevara and Fidel Castro strutting in fatigues. Most of the world has moved on from the Cold War, but the 1962 U.S. embargo is still in effect. Cuba is a time capsule. Old American cars from the 50s are kept running with cannibalized parts and Cuban ingenuity. These are working vehicles passed down through generations. And what has 48 years of hostility accomplished? It's perpetuated the Castro regime, and along with failed 5-year plans and the end of Soviet subsidies, it's impoverished the Cuban people. Yet despite that, Cubans are ingenious and resilient. Riding along the Malecón in a 1954 DeSoto made me feel like Ernest Hemingway, headed to the Floridita for a sunset mojito. People seem genuinely glad to see tourists, not only because of our money, but because it's their way. And everywhere there's music with its distinctive Cuban beat. Castro used to be an avid diver, so we set out in his footsteps to the port of Jucaro. From there, it's 45 miles to La Tortuga dive base in the mangroves of Jardines de la Reina. On the way out each day, we would motor through a labyrinth of mangroves, stopping to shoot photos of iguanas, jutias, and Cassiopeia jellyfishes. This was one of Fidel's favorite dive areas and is now a national park. Because of that and the distance from land, it's a healthy ecosystem, a throwback to the Caribbean of 50 years ago. One morning we spotted a boil of tiny surface fishes and wound up spending a half hour snorkeling with the whale shark that was feeding on them. Visibility was 100 feet, and the big critter was so intent on feeding that he kept coming back to us. Sharks are the big draw at La Tortuga. We saw many up close on every dive, another sign of a healthy ecosystem. Shark feeds are a prime feature on the program. They were attracted by frozen bait hidden in a crevice. At first, it's a bit unnerving to descend through a gauntlet of silkies and Caribbean reef sharks, but they weren't interested in divers. On the bottom, they swam around calmly until, after about 20 minutes, Fausto exposed the bait. Then all hell broke loose, and I was bumped several times while filming the action. As long as it's a bump and not a bite, let's keep on diving. After a while, we actually got tired of sharks and asked Fausto to show us the reefs. This was where the splendor of the Queen's Gardens became most apparent. Multicolored sponges, elkhorn and whipped corals decorate the surroundings and provide shelter for reef fishes. Big groupers in the 20 to 40 pound range were everywhere and weren't shy about divers. If serious fishing were going on, they would be among the first to disappear. There were little critters too, like this jawfish. We even met an unexpected friend from the Indo-Pacific. Efforts to eradicate lionfish are too little and too late, so we'd better get used to them. Many of the sites we dived didn't even have a name. One that did was Devil's Hole. Inside, hundreds of tiny silver sides reflected our lights. Tarpon gathered in schools of dozens, their silvery scales reflecting the lights of my video camera. Scientists from Cuba, Mexico, and the United States are studying Jardines de la Reina as a reef system the way it used to be, unaffected by pollution, fishing, and human population. But how long will it stay that way? Cuba will change profoundly when diplomatic relations with the United States are restored. We were fortunate to experience the time warp that is Cuba today.